Welcome to You Can't Make This Shit Up. I'm Kellen Clark.
I'm Angelina.
That's Angelina. And we are your political innovators here in Central Florida.
Yes,
Our
represent.
producer is John D. Maria. Thank you very much, John. Love you very much.
We love John.
He doesn't hate me at all.
He hates all of us secretly.
But what we do hate here at J&W is gun violence.
Yeah.
Angelina, we have had a week, like one of the most devastating we've had this year, like the highest casualties in terms of gun violence. It started with the one in Lewiston, Maine, which claimed, 16 lives, which brought out a lot of toxicity on social media. If you're on social media and the day of a shooting, you're trying to like analyze the voting patterns of the victims, you need to go outside.
Please touch some grass.
But we're not just here to talk about Maine. We're talking about here in our own backyard in Tampa.
Yes. So thank you so much for that. So so like you were saying earlier, right after this, was it this week? Shooting in Maine? I believe it was this week.
It was this week, and then a couple days after was the one in Tampa.
Exactly. So the one in Tampa, it seemed as if this was just going to be a regular fist fight. I guess one of the guys got drunk, and you know how men are. Well, not men are, but how intoxicated people are. Sorry, don't cancel me. So for this one, 2 people were killed, but 15 more were shot, and apparently a lot of people are saying that this basically shines a light on gun violence prevention theory, and that this basically defeats the odds per se. So I just wanted to hear what you were thinking about this.
So what you see in this shooting is a street with nightclubs and bars. There are plenty of cops nearby, and it's 2 dudes, drunk dudes, just pushing each other, like beefing. And instead of punching back, guy pulls out his pistol that he has for self-defense, shoots the guy straight on camera, by the way. You can find the clips just uploaded on YouTube somehow. But he shoots the guy, he kills another guy, and he just starts open firing the entire clip on everybody in like a state of sheer panic. And I think what you see here is some of the issues that come with the concept of more guns, more safety. The idea being that if people are armed, people will be disincentivized to start violent conflicts. However, this shows that even if you stop the conflict eventually, like the police did, you don't stop the initial shots. And in some cases, those initial shots are caused only because a person had a gun instead of good old fists.
So that's where I disagree with you. So in this case, obviously, this man should not have had a gun. I mean, his life was not in danger whatsoever. Exactly. So I feel like this is not what Republicans are arguing, right? Republicans are not saying that you should just have a gun and then just whip it out, for every person.
Of course not.
Of course not. Don't just whip it out. But
can you stop saying weird things, Angelina?
I'm going to repent for that later. But but with this case, this man just brought out this gun to this fist fight, and obviously he was not in the right state of mind. I would never bring a gun to a bar. First of all, I don't drink, so I wouldn't bring that.
Okay, you're better than us.
You're like, you could have fooled us earlier, but in this case, it's clear that this man was intoxicated, and he didn't need a gun. And so I feel like whenever we're saying more guns is going to lead to less violence, we're saying that more good people with guns, more sensible, sober-minded people with guns will lead to less violence.
Of course, that is, in theory, very true.
Right.
Why would you pull out a gun on a group of people that's going to shoot you straight back?
Exactly.
But the problem is that most of the people who commit mass shootings are not in the right frame of mind to begin with. And if you're intoxicated and you're panicking, you're probably not thinking about the long-term effects of what you're about to do. The guy just had the gun for self-defense, and he did use it for self-defense, but it was totally overblown to the threat.
Right.
It wasn't eye for an eye. It was family for an eye. Okay,
Exactly.
it was way out of proportion.
And what's worse is that so many innocent lives were affected as a result of
Truly,
this.
and you see this as well in places like Maine.
Mhm.
The guy was extremely paranoid. Possible, like clearly not right in the head, in a horrible frame of mind. People who are who are mentally deranged for one reason or another. Maybe it's temporary, maybe it's chronic,
Mhm.
maybe it's chemical, whatever it is, are not thinking in the same way as you and I. You and I know
Absolutely.
that if we open fire in a crowd, and some of them might have guns, that we might get shot, and we fear for our own lives.
Right.
Many of these people do not fear for their lives. They kill themselves after. So it doesn't end up truly being that way. And in some cases, when somebody has a gun for self-defense, they'll use it, and it's completely unnecessary because
Exactly.
they're not, they are intoxicated. They are not in a good frame of mind. They are panicking.
Right.
So they make irresponsible choices.
Absolutely. And I believe that, obviously we do want to talk about some sort of solution, right? Of course, there's never going to be any perfect solution because we're imperfect people. So there's no way that we can come up with some magical law that's just going
True.
to change everything. And I feel like that's the problem with today's world. We're trying to, and of course we need to go to our local leaders. We need to go to our, all of our leaders and tell them like, listen, this is what we want as the people of America. However, there is no law that they could just sign that's going to just magically make this go away. I mean, murder is illegal and yet we're
That's true.
still doing this. So outlawing guns is not going to solve the problem.
Of course not. And Angeline admits to crimes all the time on camera, so big deal. Um,
That's why you need to
and
subscribe.
yeah, so that when Angelina goes to court, you can know the full lore behind it. But I don't think when we talk about gun control that most people are talking about outlawing guns.
Right.
Generally, it's a restriction, not a ban. There have been people who are like, assault rifle ban. You have your Lyndon Johnsons and your Bill Clintons out there, but they are the majority. In Florida earlier this year, we repealed the red flag law, which confiscated guns from people who had diagnoses, people who were on no-fly lists, and other people who were confirmed by the government and intelligence agencies to be a hazard to themselves and others. People who shouldn't have guns. A lot of them were suicidal
Yes.
because if people have guns, they're more likely to commit suicide than by some more painful mean. This is that's the number one victim of gun violence every year. Over half,
Absolutely.
roughly 54% is from suicides.
Wow.
But now in Florida, a suicidal person can't even put themselves on the red flag anymore. You can't even waive your own right to buy a gun if you want to. I can sign a terms and conditions, waive away my right to free speech, waive away my right to privacy, waive away my rights to everything else. But suddenly I can't waive my own right to buy a gun.
Wow.
For the way I see it is that it has become a state of fanaticism, of that this is the number one most important right of all time,
Absolutely.
that we and that it needs to be absolute or near absolute. But the fact is, no right is absolute. We have freedom of the press, but you can get sued for libel or defamation. We have freedom of speech, but you can't shout fire in an open theater.
Exactly.
We have freedom and privacy in theory. It doesn't mean we do.
But then we have our iPhones.
Yeah, and then
I
my
better get a
iPhone's
raise for that, David.
That's our CEO hates Apple products.
Yes.
It's his number one personality trait.
Don't exist.
Apparently they don't exist.
Yes. Conspiracy theory.
But
Apple doesn't
that's a
exist.
story for a different time, isn't it?
But yes, just like you were saying, no right is so absolute. And I love the fact that you mentioned that because Republicans often put this law on a pedestal. Yes, it's important. However, it's not the most important thing.
Yeah, and I thought the responses from a lot of government leaders, not most of them, but certain ones, mostly ones who lived outside of Maine, and the behavior of a lot of political pundits and not innovators. We're the political innovators,
Right,
but
exactly.
pundits and influencers has been just beyond disgraceful. There are people within days promoting a sale that they started for firearms in as a result of it. They
It's
say
just distasteful.
15% off to protect your families from shooters. No,
No.
that is extremely distasteful to do that the day of. The many people were analyzing the voting patterns of the area to make a point about how Democrats are weak. No,
No, that's not what it's about.
it's not. And there is more to life than just politics, and there's more to politics than us versus them.
Yes.
If your initial response to people getting killed is to analyze their politics to see whether or
They
not
vote for Joe Biden.
therefore they deserve it. No.
No.
Go outside, touch some grass, pick up a sport, ask the pretty lady at the coffee shop out or something else, and get your life together because you are the one ruining Thanksgiving. It is November. So this is important.
Helen, I can't with you.
I can't with me either.
But yes, so that obviously we're going to talk about legislation. So let's talk about what exactly this horrible legislation is in Florida and why
Absolutely.
they're blaming our government for this happening. So, would you like to talk about that or would you like me?
You can take this one away.
Okay, sounds good. So, right now, you do not need a permit to have a gun in Florida. So, it sounds bad, but it's pretty much the same thing as it was before, except you just don't need a permit. So, you still
Yeah.
need to be 21 years or older.
Correct.
You still cannot be, you can't be an illegal alien. You can't be someone that was convicted or of a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence, and you can't have a felony on you. So there are still background checks being done. I don't know why there is this weird rumor going around that you don't need a background check in
Yeah.
Florida, but there is a 72-hour hold, for you to get your gun or to get
Correct.
yeah. So that's why I feel like everyone is saying that, oh yeah, the laws in Florida are too loose or whatever, but it's pretty much the same thing. I do disagree with one thing though with Florida, and that is the fact that we are not making sure that people are being safe with their guns, because it's not about outlawing guns per se, it's about ensuring gun safety. And especially for our children in America, it's always the little kids where, they see a gun and they're curious and then they play with it and then something happens, right? So that is why I believe that we need gun safety classes, not just for the individual, but for the entire family as well.
Yeah. Make sure to comment on the video if you've seen a clip of someone on Instagram Live accidentally shooting their phone because they're flexing their guns.
Oh my goodness, that's a thing?
I've seen multiple of these.
Wow.
It's a genre of people accidentally shooting their phones trying to wave their guns to look cool.
I had no idea.
Look, you need there needs to be. I mean, I'm glad we have the provisions that we do have in place, but repealing the red flag law, I think, is against everything that gun violence prevention is about. It was about not punishing good gun owners, but only temporarily, by the way, only temporarily suspending firearms from mentally unwell people who are depressed, people who are likely to kill themselves. That was a very good law. You don't have to punish good gun owners because they did nothing wrong. They keep it for self-defense usually.
Yes.
But now we've gotten to the point where it's like, no. We can't tell suicidal people they don't own guns. They can decide for themselves. They can decide for themselves, but just because you can doesn't mean you should. As weird as that, as bad as that might make me sound, it was temporary. It wasn't that big of an infringement, really. It wasn't, and it saved lives. And I am concerned because of how we've been loosening. And think about the fact that we don't require a permit anymore. It takes a year to get a license to drive, but you don't need any permit to hold a gun that you use to kill people. Carrying, my bad, carrying. You can own, but that's an issue for me, at least. It's why punish good drivers and force them to take a whole year to get a license when not everybody drives badly? Why punish good drivers with with all these other things. And I think that same logic, for some reason, doesn't transfer over to guns. Yes, it is your right, via the Second Amendment to own a gun, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be allowed to make a license for it. You technically have the freedom to free movement, decide where you want to go within the country. But that doesn't mean we can't license motor vehicles because lives are at stake. What you do will impact what happens to other people. You don't want unstable people or incapable people on the road, and we shouldn't be comfortable with having unstable or unable people having firearms. But it seems more and more that the idea of licensing a guns, requiring people to demonstrate a certain level of safety, that's just so taboo for some reason.
I see what you're saying, but according to this law now, of course, it is a bit harder to measure somebody's mental state of mind, of
It
course,
is.
because some people are really good at hiding it. But they do not permit people that are mentally unwell to own a gun. And
Yeah,
so I
to
think
buy
that
one.
that's what some people are thinking is the fact that, oh, yeah, like if this person is crazy and they shot up this and they did this and they did that, that they're still able to get a gun. No, they are still going to be denied for that.
Yes, of course, if they already own a gun, because there's no red flag law, it's relevant if they already own the gun.
Okay.
So that's where I think we slipped up because the red flag law would
Oh, so you're
allow
saying that you can't take away that person's gun per se, or
yeah, it was a temporary hold. It wasn't
okay,
they weren't confiscating your gun, say, buy a new one, loser. No. It,
okay,
it was a, you know, we have a doctor's note. It seems that you're in a severe depressive state. Don't take this the wrong way. This is for your own safety. People in depressive states use guns to kill themselves, and we don't want you to kill yourself.
absolutely.
But then you have Ron over here, your Uncle Ron,
Uncle
on
Ron, hi.
Uncle Ron on all like on TV and the campaign trail, celebrating the fact that he got rid of that and saying that it's to protect his citizens, which it's just so disingenuous in my eyes. But that's obviously just my view of it.
I see what you're saying there. And I do believe that, I mean, I really don't think that there is anything wrong with this particular law. I just believe that we need to also include some form of gun safety course. So that
Correct.
brings me to our next topic. So, what are some solutions to this issue, if there is any?
Yes, absolutely. I think guns should have to require a license the same way I need a license to hunt animals, but I don't need a
License to hunt
license. I don't
humans?
need a but I don't really need a license for humans, do I? If we're gonna require licensing for animals, wild animals, then we need to
So, are you
require it.
saying that we're just a bunch of animals, Kellen?
No, the government's saying that because wild animals require a higher barrier of entry in some cases. We need to have, I think, full licensing. If a person is on like a no-fly list or anything like that, they need to not be allowed near them. A lot of them can get around. A lot of the rules are very easy to get around because gun shows don't tend to be very strict. So a lot of people get around the rules by just buying from there. So there needs to be a way to close that somehow. Leave that to the imagination of the lawmakers. There has to be a way. I don't know what it is exactly. I need to do more research, but that needs to be fixed up. And we also need, I think, in a lot of cases, there should be a very high limit for what you're allowed to carry. There needs to be more security in places like nightclubs. Nobody with a gun, even for self-defense, should be in a nightclub.
Well, it's according to the law. So, with the law in Florida, there are certain places where you cannot have your
Schools,
gun.
for
Of
instance.
course, schools, universities, and bars are one of those places as well.
Yes, and then places where you sell alcohol, of course. But a lot of these shootings, I think you'll notice, where do most of them take place? Where did the one in Tampa take place? At places that they're not allowed to carry a gun. It's because chances are they're not checked for it.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the onus there is largely on the businesses. We need to be able to demand of our businesses to screen for that stuff more effectively. I think you're probably, from my guess, you're more likely to get busted for bottled water than a Glock sometimes. That's a joke. Do not take that seriously. But point is that you don't need to carry a gun everywhere you need to go. The power to end a life in the palm of your hand is enough to mess up with most people's decision making. If a person is scared, if a person is intoxicated, if a person is having a bad day, and you have that with you, you can open yourself up to making a mistake, like what happened in Tampa. The man made a mistake. If he didn't have that gun on him, he would have been roughed up, but he would have been free. Now he's going to go to prison for the rest of his life if he doesn't get the injection.
Oh, not the injection.
Hey, this is Florida. We love the death sentence here in Florida.
So for my final thoughts / solutions, of course, there is no perfect solution for this. I believe that this is why we all have to just be human and compassionate towards each other, because it's too much of the right says this or the left says this or whatever, and there is no community, right? There is no way that the law can predict, if Kellen is mentally stable enough to have a gun, right?
And there is podcast.
And there is no way of doing that, right? So that is why we need community. So for an example, if you know somebody, and personally I do, and they're thinking about getting a gun, and damn well that they don't deserve to have a gun, you need to look them in their face and tell them, no, you are not going to have a gun. And that is why we need to hold each other accountable for that. And of course, that is also not even perfect, but at least we can get the conversation started. I believe the first step is making guns less taboo. Teaching gun safeties in school, teaching gun safeties, even in the workplace, so that way that people are more educated on this issue. But that is my final thought.
Yeah, my final thought. We need to be there needs to be a permit for guns, simply so that people know
Absolutely.
which side of the switch is the safety and which one isn't. That should be,
Yes.
if that isn't required by law, that's a
Just shoot it,
mistake.
right?
Oh boy. Angelina wants to get a gun and she doesn't know whether
That was a joke.
she doesn't know whether the black or the red is the safety. So sad. But just because you have a gun does not mean it should be carried with you everywhere you go. Many very loud conservatives like to promote the idea that if everybody in public has a gun, or at least enough people in public have a gun, guys with guns, good guys with guns, then we'll protect ourselves. But what we see in places like Tampa is that's not universally the case. You can have good guys in the area, but it won't stop the first few from dying. It'll just make fewer people die. Sometimes a generally good person with a gun in the wrong frame of mind, either because they're intoxicated or because they're having a bad day or because they're scared, will make a mistake. If everybody in public had a gun, and if you had a guy with a gun and he was standing in front of the grocery aisle that you need to grab something off of, would you not think twice before grabbing it? I think most people would. There's a natural fear, I think, with many people who openly carry guns, or people who, if there's too many people with them. Life should not be a mortality calculation everywhere you go. We should be free to roam the streets without fear of being shot all the time. And my advice would just be to not carry a gun with you everywhere you go, because usually it's not worth it. Usually you open yourself up to more danger than you do protection. With that, do not like this video under any circumstance. Remember to unsubscribe.
Yes.
Don't want notifications. If you share this with your friends, we're going to come down on you for stuff like that. We'll DMCA you.
We're going to find you.
In all seriousness, if you made it to the end, thank you so much.
Yes,
it
we
means
love you.
the world to us. I'm just joking. Have a great day.
Have a great day. Mwah.